Okay, so you want to run a lottery. Not sell tickets behind a gas station counter. Run the whole thing. A government-licensed, government-protected monopoly, selling a product with zero competitors, zero substitutes, and a customer base that keeps coming back even after losing. The product itself is almost nothing. A strip of paper, a few printed numbers, a transaction that takes about 3 seconds at the register. Remember that strip of paper. By the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly what it's actually buying, and from whom. In fiscal year 2024, American players spent $104.7 billion on lottery tickets. That number nearly doubled in 16 years. Here's the part that should stop you. Of every dollar that goes into a lottery terminal, the state keeps roughly 33 cents. Not as profit on a product with real costs, printing ink, a random number generator, some retail shelf space. 33 cents kept on a business with almost nothing to build and nothing to manufacture. Compare that to a Las Vegas casino floor. A slot machine typically keeps somewhere between 2 and 10% of what gets fed into it. Roulette, 5% or less. The state lottery you buy tickets from at the pharmacy checkout runs a house edge that would get a casino shut down for predatory practice. Nobody shuts down the lottery. The state is the house. This isn't a fringe industry. It's bigger than you think, and it's growing faster than almost any other form of legal gambling in the country, partly because it's never been easier to buy in. Lottery apps, self-service kiosks, and subscription number picking have turned what used to be a trip to the counter into something you can do from a phone, in line, without ever talking to another human. So here's the illusion. The lottery sells itself as a tax you volunteer for, a dollar and a dream, funding schools, funding veterans, funding whatever cause is printed on the billboard above the highway. The reality is a 45-state, multi-billion-dollar gambling apparatus built specifically to extract the maximum amount of money from the players least equipped to lose it, and it works exactly as designed. 45 states run a lottery. Only 5, Alabama, Alaska, Hawaii, Nevada, and Utah don't. California, New York, Florida, and Texas each sold more than $8 billion in tickets in fiscal 2024. Together, 4 states accounted for more than a third of all lottery sales in the country. But raw sales numbers hide the real story, which is about who is actually buying. Start at the bottom. North Dakota residents spent about $48 per capita on lottery tickets in 2024. Move to the national average, and it climbs to somewhere around $300 per person. Now go to the top. Massachusetts residents spent an average of $856 per capita that same year, more than $250 above any other state in the country. Same country, same national game, and the appetite for it climbs nearly 18-fold from one end of the map to the other. And even in the most player-friendly states, the ones that pay out the largest share of prizes, the math never flips. Virginia paid out 80% of ticket sales as prizes in fiscal 2024, the highest rate in the country. Kentucky paid 75%. Even at those rates, the player is still, on average, losing money on every ticket. There is no version of this game where the house doesn't win. This isn't a business you enter to compete on price or quality or customer service. There's exactly one seller in each state, and that seller controls the odds, the payout structure, and the marketing budget used to convince you to play again tomorrow. One estimate puts total American lottery spending in 2024 at around $125 billion. That's more than Americans spent that year on movies, music, sports tickets, and books combined. This isn't even a new business model. Lotteries funded parts of the Revolutionary War and helped bankroll early American universities and roads. Then, through the 1800s, scandal after scandal, rigged drawings, bribed officials, operators who simply vanished with the money, got them banned in state after state. For most of the 20th century, running a lottery in America was a criminal enterprise, not a government program. New Hampshire brought it back in 1964, framed as a painless alternative to raising income or sales taxes. Other states watched the revenue come in, and within 3 decades, the model that used to get people arrested had become one of the most reliable line items on a state budget. The product didn't change, only who was allowed to sell it. The physical footprint alone tells you how normalized this has become. Lottery tickets are sold at hundreds of thousands of retail locations across the country: gas stations, pharmacies, grocery stores, convenience chains, meaning the average American lives closer to a lottery terminal than to a licensed casino, a sportsbook, or in many towns, a full-service bank branch. Access was never the barrier. It was designed to be the opposite of a barrier. Let's talk about what it actually costs to play this game, and what the odds actually look like once you get past the billboard. Take Powerball. 5 numbers from a pool of 69, plus 1 number from a pool of 26. The odds of matching all 6 and winning the jackpot are 1 in 292,201,338. The jackpot number is also the least likely number to ever come up for you personally. Powerball's overall odds of winning any prize at all, including the smallest $4 payout, sit at roughly 1 in 24.87. That sounds almost reasonable, until you realize the game's entire expected value math is dominated by the near-impossible jackpot tier, because that's where almost all the prize money actually sits. Strip the jackpot fantasy out of the equation, and what's left is a product priced well above what it's worth. Put that number in context. The population of the entire United States is around 342 million. Your odds of matching all 6 Powerball numbers on a single $2 ticket are roughly the same as picking one specific American, at random, out of nearly the whole country. Now do the math on expected value. For a $500 million advertised jackpot, the gross expected return from the jackpot alone works out to roughly $1.71 per $2 ticket, before you subtract taxes, before the lump sum cash value discount that typically cuts the advertised number by around half, and before you account for the chance of splitting the prize with other winners. After all of that, most analyses put the real expected value at somewhere between -$1.30 and -$1.70 per ticket. Jackpot games like Powerball and Mega Millions run a house edge in the range of 60 to 75%. Daily numbers games, the ones with better odds and smaller prizes, still run around 50%. A one-armed bandit in a regulated Nevada casino is required to return at least 75% of what it takes in, and most modern slots return well above 90%. The lottery ticket sitting next to the register at your corner store is, mathematically, a worse bet than the slot machine 2 states away that gambling regulators exist specifically to police. And the odds get worse the more you chase the dream. When Powerball or Mega Millions jackpots climb above $100 million, researchers tracking household spending find that overall spending on non-gambling goods drops measurably during those weeks, and the drop is steepest for households in the lowest income tier, driven in large part by postponed housing payments. People aren't just buying a ticket. Some of them are borrowing against next month's rent to buy it. Scratch-off tickets deserve their own line item here, because they're the quiet profit center of the entire industry. They carry a shorter payback cycle, a house edge that can run even higher than jackpot draw games, and they're deliberately designed with escalating price points. $1, $5, $20, even $50 a ticket, so a player who starts small can be walked, step by step, into spending far more per visit than they intended. Compare the guardrails, too. A casino operator is legally required to fund problem gambling hotlines, train staff to recognize signs of compulsive play, and honor self-exclusion lists that can bar a person for years. Lottery retailers face none of that. The cashier selling you your 5th scratch ticket of the day has no obligation to notice, no script to follow, and in most states, no training on what compulsive lottery play even looks like, because on paper, this was never classified as gambling requiring that level of oversight. It was classified as a public program. Even the placement of the marketing follows the money. Multiple independent investigations into lottery billboard and retailer density have found ticket advertising concentrated more heavily in lower-income neighborhoods than in wealthier ones within the same city. Nobody has to write a memo ordering that. It just happens to be where the retail footprint and the marketing budget already deliver the best return. There's an unclaimed prize channel most players never think about, too. A meaningful share of prizes, the small ones especially, simply never get claimed. The ticket gets lost, thrown out, forgotten in a coat pocket past the claim deadline. In most states, that money doesn't vanish. It reverts to the lottery, folded back into future prize pools or the state's own revenue. The house doesn't just win on the math. It wins again on the tickets you forget you own. There's no license required to buy a ticket. No age verification friction beyond a glance at your face. No self-exclusion list you have to actively enroll in like you do for a casino. The single largest barrier to entry in this entire industry has been removed on purpose because the entire business model depends on volume. And the real hidden cost isn't paid by the state. It's paid by the player in a currency that doesn't show up on any balance sheet. Time, hope, and, for a specific slice of the population, a meaningful share of household income. None of this happens by accident. State lotteries are, collectively, some of the largest advertising spenders of any government-run program in the country. Billboards, television spots timed around record jackpots, point-of-sale displays engineered by the same behavioral marketing playbook used by consumer packaged goods companies. The product is chance. The marketing budget exists to make that chance feel bigger, closer, and more personal than the math will ever support. Here's the machine, and here's the cash flow, once you follow the dollar past the jackpot headline. Picture it as a $100 bill fed into the machine. Roughly $67 comes back out the other side as prizes, split among a small number of winners and a much larger number of tiny consolation payouts designed to keep players feeling like they're almost winning. About $6 goes to the retailer who sold the ticket. A few more dollars disappear into vendor contracts, terminal leases, and MUSL overhead for the multi-state games. What's left, an estimated $29 to $30 billion nationally, gets earmarked for public programs. Not $67 of your 100 going to schools. Roughly 29. Of every dollar spent on a ticket nationally, roughly 67 cents goes back out as prizes. That's the number that gets printed on the billboard. The next cut goes to the retailer, the gas station, the pharmacy, the grocery store that sells you the ticket. The national average retailer commission is 6.2% of sales, totaling almost $6.3 billion across every lottery in the country in fiscal 2024. On top of the base commission, stores that happen to sell a winning ticket often collect a flat bonus, sometimes $10,000 for selling a winning Powerball jackpot ticket, sometimes more. Zoom out, and supplying the machinery behind state lotteries is itself a sizable industry in its own right. A small handful of companies design the games, print the scratch tickets, build the terminals, and write the software running behind nearly every drawing in the country. Whichever party wins any given jackpot, these companies get paid on contract, a fixed, structural cut that never depends on a single number coming up your way. Then there's the vendor layer, mostly invisible to the player. Private companies, the largest being Scientific Games, now operating as Light and Wonder and IGT, print the scratch tickets, run the terminals, and build the software behind every draw. In states that outsource management entirely, private operators like Camelot run day-to-day operations under contract, collecting a fee regardless of whether the state's own take goes up or down that year. There's one more piece of the machine worth naming, the second chance drawing. Most state lotteries let you enter your losing tickets, the ones you'd otherwise throw away, into a separate drawing for smaller prizes or merchandise. It sounds like a courtesy. Functionally, it's a retention tool. It gives a losing ticket a reason to stay in your pocket, and gives the lottery one more touchpoint to keep you engaged with the brand between purchases. For the multi-state games, Powerball, Mega Millions, there's an entire nonprofit association sitting in the middle. The Multi-State Lottery Association, MUSL, administers the shared drawing infrastructure that dozens of state lotteries plug into, and every member lottery pays into its overhead in proportion to how much of the total game sales it represents. After prizes, retailer commissions, and vendor and administrative costs are subtracted, what's left is net revenue. $34.5 billion nationally in fiscal 2024, up 68% from $20.6 billion in 2008. Roughly $30.6 billion of that flows into designated public programs, education, most commonly, but also veterans services, environmental funds, and general state budgets depending on the state. And here's the twist nobody puts on the billboard. Multiple academic studies, going back decades, have found that earmarking lottery money for education does not reliably increase how much states actually spend on schools. Legislators simply redirect the general fund dollars that would have gone to education anyway and spend the freed-up money elsewhere. One widely cited study found that a lottery dollar earmarked for education raised education spending by about 79 cents. A non-earmarked lottery dollar raised it by about 43 cents. Other studies found no measurable effect at all. So the money the player is told they're contributing to often isn't, at least not on top of what would have been spent regardless. The lottery isn't a donation. It's a revenue stream that happens to wear an education-shaped label. The jackpot itself is engineered to grow, not just to happen. When nobody matches all the numbers, the prize doesn't reset. It rolls over, stacking on top of the next drawing, and the next, and the next. Longer odds mean longer rollover streaks, which means bigger headline numbers, which means more media coverage, which means more ticket sales. The 292-million to 1 odds aren't just a side effect of the math. They're the engine that makes the marketing possible in the first place. Now here's what happens when the system that's supposed to guarantee fairness, the one selling point the lottery has over an unregulated back-alley game, breaks down completely. Eddie Tipton was the Information Security Director at the Multi-State Lottery Association, the organization trusted by dozens of states to run the random number generators behind their biggest games. He had direct access to the machines that were supposed to make the whole system unrigable. Starting as early as 2005, Tipton installed self-deleting malicious code inside the random number generator software. The code restricted the winning numbers to a predictable, narrow set, but only on specific dates, and only for a few seconds each time. Then it erased itself. With his brother Tommy and a longtime friend, Robert Rhodes, Tipton bought and claimed winning tickets through anonymous trusts, through associates, through anyone who wasn't him, across Colorado, Wisconsin, Iowa, Kansas, and Oklahoma between 2005 and 2011. The scheme's biggest swing came in December 2010. A man walked into a convenience store on the north side of Des Moines and bought a hot lotto ticket. That ticket matched all the numbers in the December 29th drawing, a jackpot worth $16.5 million. For nearly a year, nobody claimed it. Then, with less than 2 hours left before the prize would expire permanently, an anonymous claim was filed on behalf of a trust registered in Belize. The Iowa lottery rejected it. You can't claim a prize anonymously in Iowa. That single rejection is what cracked the case open. Investigators pulled convenience store surveillance footage from the day the ticket was purchased. It showed Eddie Tipton, the man responsible for securing the very system he was gaming, buying the winning ticket himself. The financial trail is what made the case airtight. Investigators traced a $783,000 wire transfer out of Robert Rhodes' account following a rigged 2007 Wisconsin drawing, tying the money directly to the tampered software. In Kansas, they found deposits linked to 2 separate $15,000 winning tickets purchased on the same day in December 2010, the same month as the big Iowa jackpot, both claimed by Tipton Associates. Rhodes eventually pleaded guilty and testified against Tipton as part of a deal with prosecutors. Tipton's brother, Tommy, a former justice of the peace in Texas, was separately charged and convicted for his role in the Colorado and Oklahoma drawings. The organization at the center of it all, the Multi-State Lottery Association, wasn't a rogue actor being hacked from outside. The fraud came from the person hired to be its last line of defense. He was arrested and eventually confessed. Investigators traced rigged drawings back to 2005, tallying a total of more than $24 million in prizes either stolen outright or attempted through the scheme across 5 states. Tipton was convicted and sentenced to up to 25 years. The Multi-State Lottery Association's longtime executive director was forced out. A class action settlement eventually set aside $4.3 million to refund players who'd bought tickets in the rigged drawings, a fraction of what the fraud actually cost the system's credibility. In the years after the scandal broke, the Multi-State Lottery Association overhauled its security procedures, new oversight of random number generators, tighter access controls, outside audits. Those reforms are real, but they were reactive, not preventative. The system caught the fraud not because its safeguards were designed to catch an insider with Tipton's level of access, but because one anonymous claim, filed 2 hours before a deadline, happened to raise a flag. Change the timing by a few hours, and the biggest jackpot rigging scheme in American lottery history simply pays out, unnoticed, forever. What makes the case land harder than a typical fraud story is the 11 years. Tipton wasn't a hacker who broke in from outside once and got lucky. He spent more than a decade inside the one organization every member state lottery trusted to keep its biggest games honest, quietly rigging drawings on exactly 3 days a year, for years, while continuing to show up to work as the person responsible for making sure nobody could do exactly what he was doing. So who actually wins? In a business where the official numbers say the state wins 33 cents on every dollar and the player, mathematically, loses almost every time they play? Not the player. Across the country, roughly 40 million households play habitually, accounting for the large majority of total spending, at an estimated $2,500 a year per household. Most of those households sit in the lowest income brackets. Multiple decades of academic research, going back to the 1970s, find the same pattern every time. Households earning under $10,000 a year spend a noticeably higher share of their income on lottery tickets than households earning six figures, sometimes several times higher. The pattern isn't limited to income brackets, either. Independent surveys and academic studies consistently find that lottery participation and spending skew toward players with less formal education and toward historically marginalized communities, the same groups who, on average, have the least cushion to absorb a bad month. This isn't a business that happens to have a regressive customer base. It's a business whose growth, decade after decade, has depended on that customer base staying exactly where it is. Even the geography of the money tells the story. Massachusetts officials have publicly noted that some of the state's unusually high lottery sales come from residents of neighboring states crossing the border specifically to buy tickets with better payout rates, meaning the state isn't just extracting money from its own population, it's importing customers from next door to extract money from theirs too. Not really the state's general public either. Once you follow the education dollar and find, more often than not, it isn't actually additive. The reliable winners sit closer to the machinery, the retailers collecting steady commissions and the occasional five-figure bonus check. The private vendors, Scientific Games, IGT, Camelot, and their peers, collecting fees whether the state's revenue climbs or falls that year, because their contracts are structured around operating the system, not around the state's net take. And the state government itself, which gets a politically painless revenue stream that never has to be called a tax, even though, by every economic definition, that's exactly what it is. Illinois learned that lesson directly. In 2011, the state hired a private manager, Northstar Lottery Group, a consortium backed by two of the industry's biggest vendors, to run its lottery under a 10-year contract built around aggressive revenue targets. Northstar missed those targets 3 years running. The state terminated the contract for performance failures and still had to reimburse Northstar millions of dollars in closing costs, on top of the management fees it had already collected for years of underperformance. The company that failed to deliver got paid to leave. That's not a bug in the structure. It's what a fee-based contract, written by people who expect to keep winning, looks like. A private company running this exact structure, a fixed 60 to 75% house edge, a customer base skewing toward people who can least afford to lose, marketing designed to maximize repeat purchase from the heaviest users, would face gambling regulators, consumer protection lawsuits, and congressional hearings within a year. When the state runs it, it's a public program. To be fair, this isn't a settled debate among the people who study it. A University of Chicago survey once asked a panel of economists whether state-run lotteries, all things considered, increase social welfare. About a quarter said yes, pointing to the genuine entertainment value and the consumer surplus of buying a small, cheap dream. Roughly a third disagreed. The rest weren't sure. Even the experts split on whether the transaction, taken as a whole, is fair. There's one more free asset the system gets, and it never shows up on any expense line: the news cycle itself. Every time a jackpot climbs past a few $100 million, local and national news outlets cover it as a story, unprompted. Camera crews at the gas station with the highest ticket sales, countdown segments on the morning shows, all of it free advertising that no other regressive revenue stream in America gets handed to it by the press. And the model is spreading, not shrinking. Since 2018, more than 36 states have legalized sports betting, often through the same regulatory playbook, a government-sanctioned monopoly or near monopoly, built on a house edge, marketed hardest to the people who can least afford to lose. The lottery didn't just survive as a business model. It became the template. Every state lottery billboard tells you the same story. Buy a ticket, fund a school, chase a dream that costs $2, and change your life for free. If you've ever bought a ticket, you're not the exception. Most American adults have, at some point, a birthday scratcher, an office jackpot pool, a $2 impulse buy at the register while paying for gas. That's exactly why this business works at the scale it does. It was never built to extract everything from a small number of people. It was built to take a little from almost everyone, and a lot from the people who can afford at least. None of that is technically a lie. The money can fund schools. Somebody, somewhere, does occasionally win. But none of it is the whole picture either. Not the 292-million to 1 odds. Not the education dollars that often just replace money that would have been spent anyway. Not the fact that the household spending the highest share of its income on this particular dream is usually the household that can least afford the loss. The system was even tested once, from the inside, by the one person who understood exactly how the odds were built. And for 6 years, he beat it. Not by luck, by access. Which tells you everything about who this game is actually designed to protect. Go back to that strip of paper from the beginning. 3 seconds at the register, a few printed numbers, gone by tomorrow. By now you know what's actually priced into those 3 seconds. A 292-million to 1 bet, a fee structure that pays retailers and vendors whether you win or lose, and a state government that gets to call the whole arrangement a public good instead of what, on a balance sheet, it actually is. So the question isn't really whether you'll ever win. The odds already answered that. The real question is this: are you buying a ticket, or is the ticket buying something from you? And if it's the second one, are you the one who gets to decide when that stops?